So, warm welcome from my side to everybody. Wish you a good afternoon or a good evening wherever you are. Could you imagine a few months ago the same situation like now? You're sitting at your PC listening to a webinar from ever where you are. I think that's fascinating. So we are now connected. There's no reason not to exchange knowledge. And I think that's what digital transformation is about. And the pandemic might have been somehow unwanted stress test, but I guess it also accelerated digitalization in nearly all areas of our life. That might be not new, because as you see here, there have been already papers or news about it. So we are already in 2016. The Wall Street Journal stated that why software is eating the world, or in the Economist, the world most valuable resources is no longer oil, but data. I guess the message at that time was still that, yeah, there's something coming. And I think even so, sometimes we can talk about digitalization is about speed. It has been already there some decades earlier, because we made development in IT technology or digital technologies already in the 60s and discussed about how can it be used. But the change, or the fundamental difference might be that today we are connected and we share data. We all may have one or even two smartphones or even additional devices at home, at work. So we generate a lot of data. We can collect this kind of data, and sometimes we also make sense out of this data and create further value. And I think that's what makes digital transformation so interesting. And that's also maybe that it is a trend right now. And the difference maybe to my former speaker, thank you very much for your interesting lecture, Christine, was that I'm not focusing on one discipline. Digital transformation is more, I would say, a holistic issue. And if we listen to Pierre Nathem, we realize that he claims that digitalization is the main reason just over half of the companies on the Future 500 have disappeared since the year 2000. And I think that's maybe a little bit strong and maybe also pessimistic view. I think, yes, of course, there have some main companies disappeared, but there are also other companies coming. Why I say this is one of the most significant managerial challenge in OD, or in organizational development, might be that right now, we as managers, we are mostly focusing on how to keep the operations running. And what we are good at, providing stability and efficiency. But this is maybe not what is in particular needed if we would like to transform our business towards more digital business and a digital age. Then we maybe need a different capability to make this move. And maybe we need also an imagination or make sense of what this might be possible to do and how this might be look. And I'm not quite sure, but the question for me to you is, are you and your business prepared for this kind of journey? Are you doing well? If we take a look at what another study from Kane and colleagues that was together with Deloitte, published in MIT Sloan Management Review, asking them, okay, what do you expect? What is coming? Are digital technologies, or have they a big potential to transform the way we do work and organize work? And you see here that the majority, close to 90%, says, yes, we agree, or even said, we strongly agree. 60% said, we strongly agree. Of course, there are also others who do not agree. And if we look for other studies, we see that digital transformation or digitalization is very heterogeneous. So there is a spectrum from We are early adapters. We test it out, and we are nearly a digital business towards business where they still think they are not really a digital business, and they also not really think they are on their way to be a digital business. Anyhow, I think the challenge here is, so there will be fundamental change. But as I asked you, are you prepared? And if you listen what this, it was a global study claimed, they said, hey, look, we feel that we lack seriously certain kinds of knowledge, skills, and abilities. So it was something like 44% claiming we do not really know, and we are also not able to conceptualize how this new digital technology will impact our current business model and processes. So as they do it right now. And again, 44% say that, yeah, we maybe see something coming, as they all agree that there will be fundamental changes, but we are not really prepared to do experiments or take risks, and maybe we even lack the willingness to do that. If I talk to students in MBA, asking them how much risk-taking are you or is your organization, then maybe well, I often hear that we try to be innovative, but it's mostly like we ask others to be innovative, and then if that is working, we're willing also to jump on this train. And if you see the other questions or items was also rated quite high. So we could see that closely 40% said we lack the ability to manage or work in distributed digital savvy teams. I guess over the last half year or the year, due to the pandemic, we learned a lot about digital leadership, organizing for home office, and also doing work distributed in a more digital way. But still, we also realize the limits and the challenges of doing so. And if I think what kind of new technologies we have and how fantastically we could use that, I also see in my close environment that we quite often are not really good in using them for collaborative purpose. So as somebody who has to publish, usually I also write one or other paper, but I mostly do that in my home office for myself, and then make a copy, ship it over to a colleague and say, hey, can you please contribute, add feedback, whatever is needed? And he's saving that. But we rarely really write together in one document. And I tested that sometimes, and I would say it's also challenging. So there's also cultural issues, which I would say we need to work on. Doing so, I think the main challenges in digital transformation, as in my beginning, is that there is not just one single issue or challenge we need to consider in successfully managing digital transformation. It's more like there are many different issues which are interdependent. So if we, for example, here in my model, I said, yeah, we may use 4 main pillars. So this is happening because we have digital technology, and there will be new digital technology, either because the companies ask for them and develop them, or it's even expected from external stakeholders like the society. My kids are very digital savvy. They use that much more than I use, and they also have certain kinds of expectations. And by that, they usually check products and say, hey, is this good working? So this then maybe feedback into the strategy and provides new opportunities, and also companies have to decide, where do we want to go? Do we still do what we did in the past, just apply new technology, or do we want to do something totally different? This is then feeding back to the business model. How would this be operationalized? There might be new opportunities using digital technologies, but at the same time, maybe also totally different ways to organize and do business. And this is then the question, okay, what will our business model be? At the same time, I think what is often neglected, we also need to involve hearts and minds. So it's about who's doing that and how can we get the people motivated, making this transformation, doing the upskill. And that also has a lot to do with what kind of culture we have. And maybe there's also some kinds of mind shifts, cultural shifts necessary to be good or successfully prepared for this kind of journey. So I think it's mostly about the interdependencies. That's why I spotted these three areas: thinking digital, which is more directed towards, okay, what is the direction we would like to go, and how do we need to culturally transform and also be able to go this way. And there are a lot of mind shifts. And as also Christine, my former presenter, said, there is also a lot about leadership and how to change the way we do things. At the same time, I think it's about designing digital. So if we decide this is the way we would like to go, how is this operationalized? And there's a lot of on business model innovation and digital entrepreneurship, which I will come to later, explained already. And the third area then is going digital. I think talking about it and just focusing on the technology is insufficient. We need also to think about how can we enable people, like I said earlier, doing really co-creation, doing really collaboration together. That's different than just saying, yeah, we have a collaborative tool. But talking and walking the talk is sometimes different. And that's what I think needs to be addressed in going digital. To going a little bit deeper, as I said, thinking digital, I expect really fundamental disruptions from the digitization. Digitization is happening since decades. So we transform analog issues into data, and this then hopefully leads to some kind of digitization that we either have improved processes, making advantage of this data, or different business models. From this, there's digital disruption happening. And as an organization, we realize, oh, damned, there's a lot going on. How do I keep competitive? How do I keep the customer happy? And this then leads to digital transformation, and it's a reinforcing loop. So if you then transform, of course, usually you digitize more. And because you digitize more, this again reinforces digitization. And then the wheel is running. So I think that digitization is fundamentally changing the world and how we do and interact, because we will collect a lot of data and we can recombine this data and can do lots of different things which we didn't really know about in the beginning. The question is just, how can we get better in making sense of what will maybe happen? How can we imagine a digital future? And that is also thinking about what it might be needed, this transformation capability, what kind of skills, and maybe also how is this transferred into the business model? Which leads then to the question, what might be a good strategy? And I think these digital technologies, they will change a lot. And as I said already, data is at the core. We will have access to data, and we will be able to modify them, recombine them, analyze them, and from this we will have the opportunity to come up with totally new business models. Which then maybe also is the question. In the past, mostly it was the business strategy isolated from the IT strategy, and I still see that people teach on IT and also from this derive a strategy, and they teach on business, and from this we arrive at a business strategy. The fundamental challenge of having a good digital strategy is how to combine this and to fusion these two different strategies to overcome the view that the IT strategy follows the business strategy. I know that in the past we were focusing on resources and how to exploit them, transform them into a product, and to optimize this. And communication and data and information was supplementing just as feedback to do a better job there. Right now, I think it's shifting or complementary. We have data which provides us new resources to do business and create value. The question is, how can we better understand how to utilize these digital technologies and their contribution to value creation and capturing, and also to make better decisions there and to improve the strategic decisions making. And doing so, I think this is where we need to think more digitally in that sense, that we maybe need to reframe and rethink what we thought in the past about what might be possible talking about digitalization. And I guess that's why I call it designing digital, making sense of this. We also need then to think about, okay, how as a business can we operationalize this? And from all the discussions we usually differentiate between exploration and exploitation. So the exploration of new possibilities where then entrepreneurship fits in, versus exploitation of old certainties where maybe we have a more structured approach. I see that quite often in business model innovation. Digital entrepreneurship, from my point of view, is very promising if we live in a VUCA world, as Christine also mentioned, where it is very difficult to predict how the future will look like and where we would like to exploit new possibilities. And then the question is, okay, how can I recognize these new entrepreneurial opportunities? And that's not only something for startups. I think this kind of mindset is also needed being a manager of a bigger company. It doesn't really mind that you have to only do new business, new ideas. It's that it is complementary to these other ways. And the question is, when do we do the one thing, digital entrepreneurship, and when do we just administrate resources? And I think the other very promising way to think about how can we use digital technologies for making sense of business in a digital world is business model innovation. And I called it here through Industry 4.4 because I think that is the trajectory we are, at least in the Western world, on. We had the early revolution, then we had number 2, 3, and now we claim we are in the industry revolution or in Industry 4.0 because we have now cyber systems which are also nicely connected to the tangible systems we have. And doing so, we have new opportunities to do business. And Gassmann is providing a nice framework where he says, okay, who is the target group, what should we do with them, and how should we do it, and what kind of value do we create? And he elaborates also that there are certain kind of pattern or archetypal pattern which helps to think about how do successful firms look like in the Industry 4.0. And the question is, do we always come up with new things, or can we look for what is working well, learning the principles and apply them on the company? And I guess both ways, the digital entrepreneurship as well the more structured business model innovation approach is of value, designing potential business models for organizations in the future, which is more and more digital. However, I think what we should not neglect is that organization is still mostly about people. So people coming together, organizing for work, they can do more or leverage their potential as I myself could do, or you yourself could do in isolation. The question is, how does it look in the digital world? And as we learned from the report of reality, is that one lack this study identified was that we need to get better, or also think about how do we collaborate and co-create something. And I think this is mostly about that we have a lot of tools, and there's also a lot of digital tools coming up where we could think about this can be used for collaboration or co-creation. But mostly in today's, I would say, traditional organizations, we work in silos, which has certain advantages. It's easy to communicate. We have the same understanding usually. And then there's another silo. And the challenge is how to bridge this. And I think what we need to get better on, that we work on what might be the culture of collaboration, which is required for digitalization. And that we think about, okay, what do we want there? Which is then the cultural level. And then, of course, we need to enable the system, the organization, and also tune our management systems into, okay, how do we really design collaborative organization? This is more about, okay, how do we enable and incentivize the employees and organizations? In particular, if we work in ecosystems where it's not just the organizational boundaries, which are the fences, we are more and more independent about other organizations. We need to think about how can we do it together. And of course, if we have sufficient power, we still can go for command and control. But as the power is more and more distributed and more interdependence coming up, we also need to think about, okay, maybe there's a different way, and there might be different approaches to really collaborate and have a culture for designed co-creation. And then, of course, in the end, if we have this collaborative culture, we also need to think about, okay, what might be tools which can be used and established for doing the co-creation in this kind of purpose. So in the end, wrapping up, what can you learn from managing successfully digital business transformation? I think is that there's not one single thing you need to address. There is a multitude of issues you need to orchestrate. And that's what I think it's the interesting part of digital transformation management, that yes, it is about the strategy. Yes, it is about the business model, but at the same time, it is about the culture, because digital technologies is affecting all of this. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Prof. Michael. I think digital transformation is affecting almost everybody or everybody attending these webinars. And I'm sure there is a number of questions. We have received some of them. And also we have now 1 p.m. in Switzerland and 8 p.m. in KL or in China. I would still say we take the time to answer a few questions. I hope all of you can stay a few more minutes. I was about to ask, you mentioned holistic approach at key drivers, but basically you gave with your last sentences, you gave the answer mentioning business models, strategies and culture. Would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I think in general, when we reflect about, okay, what are the key drivers for digital transformation, then I would say, yes, it is definitely digital technology, as I state, and this might be addressed in an organization by what is the strategy perspective, what is the business model perspective, or the cultural perspective. However, I think there's a fourth one or another general one, and this is this external expectations, which might also result into a cultural shift. And as I see the discussion on new work, and as I teach also on sustainability and the expectation that digital technology should help us to make a major step into the direction of sustainability, there are also a lot of external expectations forcing business to do something. And I guess business is in the unique position that, of course, they can design and create technologies, and at the same time, they also can dance within the ecosystem to utilize this. The challenging part might be that we need also to have a more holistic picture on that and to incorporate all these aspects in our decision making for successful business transformation.
Okay, thank you very much. And next question, you mentioned digital adventure, and you asked the attendees the questions, are we ready? And my question to you, are we ready? If yes, why? If not, why not? And what are the challenges? Maybe if you could elaborate a little bit on this.
I think from my point of view, we have still space to improve on how to get better on digital business transformation, because we quite often rely on the established success factors or theories from the past. Unfortunately, some of them are not longer working in today's world. But the challenging part, in particular for bigger organizations, is they make investments like a new production line, and they are planned that for the next 5 to, I don't know, 20 years. And as I have my background in forestry, you plant a tree and you harvest it in 100 200 years. So there's a long time delay. The challenge for companies is maybe to also be open enough to have a more ambidextrous approach. So on the one side, acknowledging that they are doing good, they have maybe a well-running business model, but at the same time being willing to also research or investigate what can be done to do exactly the opposite, or maybe even to jeopardize the existing one, and also don't see it as costs. This is an investment. And an investment means that yes, maybe it's not working, but best case, it is working. So again, then it's a question of allocating resources. And I think we also need to get better. That's my main message in really orchestrating the different aspects. And still, also in education, we are very much linear thinking and isolated. And this is the most important discipline. There's another most important discipline, and we are not good in talking to each other. And as long we just see digitalization, which is up to the IT to discuss and not do that incorporate in the general management discussion on higher level, on board level. And I doubt that every board has a digital officer. Some have that, but many lack this. I would say there's something we can improve on.
Good point. Talking about the digital officer, would that be one of the measures which exist to actually identify digitalization of a business? Or what other measures would you identify? This is a question from Philip.
I think having a digital offer or a chief digital officer is good sign that you realize, okay, there's something you need to upskill or to emphasize on. Anyhow, I just think if it's just one person, then you have again externalized it. So I would like to have a more built-in approach to it, where in general you are aware of. There are a lot of data around, and you maybe even are spotting that in the past. For example, you had the products which measured a lot of flows, and the data was just a side product or a side effect out of this. Now you are there and need to think about, okay, what can we do and make out of this? And it is okay to have a chief digital officer which point on this and say, hey, look, we need also to consider on this. But I think it needs more integration into the general thinking of everybody in the company. And everybody needs also to think about how can I improve my work, making or utilizing the existing potentials.
Thank you very much. Maybe one or two more questions. We got a number of questions relating to less developed countries, maybe also lack of potential for investments into digital transformation. Can you say something or give a recommendation to maybe an environment with less financial power or opportunities?
I believe that money is always very helpful if you have it. But I can also give you an example. I'm from Germany, even working in Switzerland. I would say we are quite well off, but we have an industry, our automotive industry, which has a lot of money. And I would say they still have a hard time to really leverage the potential of digital technologies. Yes, we do a lot and we are improving, but I know other areas where there's maybe less money available, but this is then also leveraged to make really focus on, okay, how can we innovate? And you do not innovate just for the purpose of being innovative. You do that in order really to create value. And the general question is money needed for innovations? And I would say that very much depends on your mindset, and sometimes argue, yes, of course you need money to do something. But I would say in history, we quite often saw that the real innovations, they took off because they were at the right time at the right place, and then they also got the money. But it was not that it was funded. And yes, we need infrastructure. But I know from Africa that your infrastructure is quite well regarding mobile phone compared to, for example, if you go to the Black Forest in the southern part of Germany, where you would still find areas where there's no connection to your mobile phone.
Interesting point. Thank you. A last question relating to employees. David is asking, thinking about the fact that advanced technology gadgets like wearables might interfere with an employee's privacy. So we have on one side the digitalization and the transformation, and this brings a lot of advantages, but it brings also some disadvantages. Would you agree to that?
Unfortunately, there are many open questions, in particular ethical issues. We have certain kind of initiatives here in Europe, how to handle privacy. There is, I guess you heard about surveillance capitalism, where it is claimed that some bigger companies use our data just for selling somehow our privacy, making money out of this. I would argue that it's like a knife. You can use a knife to harvest food, but at the same time, you can use the knife for killing a person. So I would say, yes, the technology has advantages and disadvantages. So maybe we need to get better in responsible using this kind of technologies, and also reflecting on what is aesthetically okay and what maybe not. The challenging part is that with all disruptive development is coming really fast, and as society we usually are quite slow in adapting. And I'm afraid that some of today's employees will be replaced, and I'm not quite sure if they will find a new job, because we have automation, we have technology which is taking over. Because we designed in the past work quite often as a routine job, and as soon you can have a routine job which can be standardized, then usually you can also transfer it in a digital process. And I think if we focus again on the strengths of humans, which I think we are creative, which might be also a disadvantage following rules at work, then maybe we need also to think about, okay, how can we use that and see it complementary to this data-driven development, where we harmonize and use data for routine jobs, but still for the exploration of possibilities use the human capability, which is, I guess, one of the next challenges we have to deal with also as managers.